Welcome to an incomplete guide to world domination, a podcast by creators for creators, because together we can take over the world. I am your host, Brianna Toiber.
My name's Chris, and I have been running the Film Fanatics podcast, which we've probably changed our name about 3 different times, and I'll kind of discuss why we've changed our name, but I actually run a family-operated movie theater in our town.
Which is really cool.
Since 2002, we have owned the theater, and I probably was in college about the time that my family purchased it, and I was working, on and off because of college, and then out of college, I, didn't really know that I was gonna really do movies. I thought, "Oh, I'll just do something else, this is a family business." But then as I got older, the theater itself started to expand because we actually started out as a 3-screen theater. Well, in 2010, we actually remodeled and upped ourselves to a 4-screen with stadium seating, and everything was going to digital and going away from 35 millimeter film. So all the movie industry was going away from film and was going all digital. So that's kind of when I started really diving a lot into the movie business itself. And over time, it's just I was never into really podcasting, and I did some research and I was just like, man, that sounds really fun. Even though I was the type of person that don't like to speak into a microphone because I don't like to hear my voice.
Oh, same. Dude, I run 2 of these shows and I'm still like, oh, do I really sound like that? It's
Yes.
this it's this weird thing, and I think it's like there's a science behind it because when you talk, you hear yourself through like the vibrations in your skull, so it sounds lower than
Yeah.
it actually does coming out.
Yes. And so I decided to do it because I'm like, you know what? I could talk about movie reviews because I have plenty of people that come to the theater, and 90% of the time I'm at the box office selling tickets. So I get to see these people right at the first. And most of them, coming up, they're like, hey, what is this movie about? Is this movie any good? And, when you're at a theater and you're talking to someone that's working there, you expect them to know you just expect them to know what the movie's about and like, "Hey, is this any good?" And
Mhm.
of course, in a way, you should understand that when you ask a movie person that's working at a theater, "Hey, is this movie any good?" They're not gonna tell you no because
Seriously.
they want you to come in anyways. They want you to come in, spend the money on refreshments and popcorn and candy and everything else. But I had decided that I was going to do a podcast because I'm like, this would be fun, and I needed something different. I needed something to kind of spice up my daily routine. And technically, I had a little space upstairs where all the projectors are, where the movies will play and everything, which a lot of people find very interesting as a projector room. And because you
Mhm.
see these massive projectors, these massive machines, and sound towers and everything else with amplifiers and processors, and it's just a big elaborate thing.
I've actually been in one in the Palace Theater in Marlin, Texas.
Okay.
Uh, so they don't do film theater anymore, but there's a lot of like stage productions that go on. I have a friend
Yeah.
that's a big part of that, so I've been able to like go up and see the projection room. And this theater's so old that there's also seating up around where the projectionist is, and it's from back during segregation.
Right. Wow, that's neat.
Yeah, fun little bit of history. If you wanna see a cool, potentially haunted place, check out the Palace Theater in Marlin.
I've heard of that one too, because I'm in Texas as well.
I don't know if
But
I realized that, but that's like, I might I don't know.
yeah, I'm really close to the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
if I didn't realize that, I'm oblivious, and if I did realize that and I forgot, I
I
apologize.
don't I don't think so. I don't think I really mentioned it at all because I don't know, I don't think I really have, but yeah, we're literally probably 30 minutes away from Fort Worth or something.
Dude, if I ever get the chance, I will come by and visit your theater. It's gonna happen.
It's a small town theater, but the thing is it looks really modern, and it has this our logo is a small town feel with an uptown look.
I like that.
So, everything is stadium seating, everything else, and the projectors, they're literally like the same things that you would go into a Cinemark or AMC, big movie
Mhm.
chain. It's the same thing. We use the same type of equipment, different models, but we still have one of the better models that are out there, and so we can really compete with, the technology even with the bigger boys.
It's really cool. So, what has it been like spending so much time working in a movie theater? Because I feel like that's a job most people don't really think about, especially doing a theater that isn't a Cinemark or an AMC.
Yeah, it is difficult because you don't have the big backing of a corporation, but there's a large amount of independents that are out there just like us, and we actually have a, trade show that we go to every year in August, which is in Frisco at the Embassy Suites over there.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's called Show, and that's where all the movie theater owners get together, even Cinemark, the big boys, everything, independents. We all get together and we go over and talk about the movie industry as a whole, what's going on, what's happening. We have a legal department that is in Washington about any like new rules and laws that theaters have to go by and yada yada yada, and but we get to see the vendors and all the cool stuff that is coming out, and of course food and concession items that they have, like, hey, let's do this, let's do that, hey, do you want to incorporate this into your theater? It's really cool, and it's like it's really neat to see the different things that there are out there. But as a small town, we still get the movies that the bigger theaters get. It's just that we're a little bit smaller with only 4 screens, so we can't get every single movie that comes out on Friday, but we get a bunch of the first run movies. It's just we are very limited because of the space that we have. But the thing is even the bigger screens, like the Cinemarks, that have 12, 14 screens, they
Mhm.
don't have 12, 14 movies. They have they're
No.
they're playing a movie, let's just say, for instance, Sonic the Hedgehog. They're
Mhm.
playing that on 2 different screens. That's why they got so many showtimes because, 1, they're putting it in a house that may be like, "Oh, come and watch Sonic in Dolby Atmos surround sound or XD." It's the technology that you're paying for versus just the movie itself. That's really the main difference in a small independent versus a bigger corporation, a bigger chain like Cinemark, AMC, and stuff. They try to offer the bells and whistles, I guess you could say. But we still get a bunch of first runs. I mean, our lineup right now: Sonic the Hedgehog, Call of the Wild, Birds of Prey. We're actually just picking up The Invisible Man, which, by the way, kind of cool, is me and my co-host for our podcast, we just watched this movie this morning and recorded our episode for The Invisible Man earlier this morning. And I actually, before I hopped on, I just published the episode this afternoon.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, this episode's not going to be coming out for a bit, but that's still really cool.
Well, we kinda got our system down, being real small and being, like, in a singular location that nothing changes for us because we don't move around, from place to place, because what I was gonna say is, which, people find it funny, is, like I said, I do this upstairs in my projector room, which technically has been converted into my podcast studio, which
Mhm.
used to be a storeroom, and then next door there was a wall, and it was a bathroom.
So you have a bathroom right next to where you record.
Well, that's the thing. We tore down the wall that separates the storeroom and the bathroom and took out the bathroom, and now it's one big room which is carpeted and now is the podcast studio.
Oh, smart. So you don't have people flushing the toilet in the middle of a recording.
Exactly, but we did leave the two doors that we have closed. We did leave the signs that says men and women on the door.
I guess, like, why not?
Yeah. So when people see me, if someone comes up here or something and they see me walking to the door that says woman and I open up, they kind of look at me funny and then realize that's not a bathroom. That's a Wait, this is a room. So
Oh, I love that.
that's where I do everything, and since I have everything already preset with all my sound levels, since nothing really changes for us, it's so much easy for us to record our episode, just kinda fine-tune some things, and then, I mean, it's pretty much good to go, and it's been great, and, right now, I'm actually you mentioned Audacity, I'm actually using GarageBand.
I never thought about using GarageBand. I just kind of went with Audacity because I already had it for some reason. Probably some weird creative thing I was working on, got bored with it 2 days later. But I already had it and I was able to figure out the six of the buttons and I just kind of figured it out from there.
Yeah, see, I already had a Mac, so I already had GarageBand loaded.
Yeah. I don't have a Mac. One of these days I might convert to Mac.
I've really liked it. I actually have an iMac that I'm using right now, and I have it's just an HP it's just a computer monitor, but I have a monitor for my second screen that I usually have, like, my GarageBand recording on, so I can use my Mac for if I'm looking up something during the show, and I can record so I can at least look at my recording. But, so far with GarageBand, it's been, pretty good, but we did learn something a couple weeks ago. It has a limit that you can't record over, I think 53 minutes. It stops.
That's potentially problematic.
Yeah, because we did that on a big review, and I believe that was Star Wars, it was.
I need to listen to that episode because I'm like, there's so much you could go into with that one. I always my one thing that I would for sure change is when she throws the saber into the fire and the hand catches it.
Yeah.
I wanted that to be Anakin. That would have been such an interesting conversation.
Oh, it would, and we made a comment on it is, why was her lightsaber yellow?
Gold lightsaber like
Yeah.
Yoda had in some of the versions.
So yeah. So, it was just a long episode, but we actually had a friend of mine come in studio, so we had 3 people talking and just, like, going back and forth with it because he goes down, down deep into the lore of Star Wars.
He's like me except for worse.
Exactly.
I drive my mom nuts.
It was a long episode, but it was really good, but we actually got to fix it because we knew what we were I saw that it stopped, like, immediately, and I stopped our show, and, like, well, I'm glad we were ending, so we had to go back, cut some stuff out, and be able to kinda end it and everything, but we realized real quick, like, "Okay, there's a limit on GarageBand," and I wonder if the other softwares do the same thing if there's a limit, so it was kind of interesting to learn. Thank goodness I caught it and not 10 minutes later that, like, "Oh, it stopped recording."
That's one of the things I do like about Audacity, because like, I have had to do some recordings through Audacity, and I haven't encountered that issue, but I have with, like, some files where, like, I've edited them and I've exported them and I haven't touched them for months. When I try and go back into the Audacity file, it says it can't find it anymore.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there's just, like, some small little things. There's been one time where my edit disappeared because I hadn't finished it and I left it for a couple of days. Thankfully, I still have the original files. It's one of those back things up, and when you're done working on something and, like, you're done editing it, save it as an MP3 immediately just to be safe.
Oh, yeah. I'm extremely new at all of this. We've been doing the podcast, I'm going to say actually, it's been, wow, June of 2018? Can't believe it's already been that long.
Oh, you've been doing this so much longer than I have.
Oh, I feel still like I'm really new at this because we usually do one once a week, but when I started it, I think I did the first 4 episodes by myself, and I'm
Oof.
like, this is very hard for me to talk about a movie by myself. I'm like, I hate just talking into air and hoping that someone's gonna listen to me. I was fortunate enough to have an employee, which was a senior at the time. He was really, really big in movies. And I mean, we're talking about not your like modern type movies. He would like go into those independent movies that were really good. And, he had a real deep perspective, and he obviously
Film buff.
yes, he was a super film buff, and he obviously went off to college, and then, of course, another guy fell in my lap that whenever I posted on my cinema page, I put that on there like, "Hey, I'm looking for a co-host," and someone popped up, and me and him talked, and it was just like we gelled so well, and we have 2 completely different perspectives on how we look at movies, which I think is really
That's perfect.
great for the show. So because no one wants to hear the 2 people be like, "Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I like that." And it's like, it's totally how we look at it. It's like we look at it in completely different views, and it's just a awesome experience and just like, "Wow, I didn't think of it that way." And, it's been really great to have him with me and on this journey. But like I had said, I had changed our name so many times because our movie theater is called Plaza Cinema 4.
Good name.
Yeah, my initial thing was, "Hey, let's tie in a podcast to movie theaters." I don't see a lot of movie theaters doing their own podcast, so I'm like, I thought I would be kind of like stepping out there and, doing a podcast with a movie theater and like, hey, because you don't see really Cinemarks and AMCs having their own podcast. But over time, when you start thinking about it, well, what happens when you watch a movie that was a complete dumpster fire? You don't wanna trash it whenever you're a movie theater. No one will come and see you the movie. And it was really tough to be able to review a movie that we just didn't like. It was really hard. And after a while, we decided to take off the Cinema 4 and we went Plaza Podcast. And that was the name that we stuck with for a very long time, and we were still on the cinema Facebook page, and we still, we had our own little logo. And 2, 3 weeks ago, I was approached by, ironically, my hosting company that I host my podcast with. I host with Blueberry.
Haven't heard of them. I was Libsyn, but I switched to Red Circle.
Okay, well, I went with Blueberry. I actually control and I help build my movie theater website through WordPress. So
I love WordPress so much.
oh, yeah. So, Blueberry has this awesome plugin called PowerPress that really incorporates podcasting into WordPress, so it's so simple, and it's like it does all the work for you, and it looks fantastic. So, I went with them, and ironically, the CEO of the company had reached out to me whenever I think I commented or I wanted to give my opinion on my show. I actually got to talk to him because he was helping podcasters out, like, what they could do better, and I thought that was really
Mhm.
neat.
Yeah, that is cool. There's not many people that do that, and I love when people do.
So he gave me a 30-minute interview and, like, about my show, what did I want to accomplish, and I started telling him, and one thing is my name, and because told me, he goes, "When I thought of Plaza Podcast, I was thinking of Plaza from Las Vegas, that you were like a casino type podcast." So, I could like, okay, I can understand that because being in a small town, everyone knows what Plaza Cinema is. They know it's the movie theater. And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, you're right. I need a name that specifies what type of podcast I am."
People not from your town.
Yeah, exactly, and we needed to brand our own stuff. So that's kinda where Film Fanatics came in because we actually took a vote, and then we created our own Facebook page. So that's fairly new. So now we're trying to build our following with our new name of Film Fanatics, and unfortunately, iTunes kinda messed us up, and I lost some of my reviews and ratings from my old name because they thought I was changing the feed, and the old one got deleted, and it was a big mess.
That's rough. Hopefully you didn't lose too much there.
Well, the only thing I lost was my ratings and reviews, but they kept my show. They got the feed, my old feed back up, and, everything looks fine. It's just now I have to start over on ratings and reviews. But you know what? I'm okay with it. It was, it was just kind of a trial and error thing, and now here we are. And here's the cool thing. We are fixing to be hitting our 100th episode.
Oh, congratulations. It's always a big moment.
Exactly, like, the one I just posted was 93. So, we're trying to do something really big for everything, and we're giving away a Kindle Fire 10.
That's fancy.
Yeah. So, we're trying to push that, we're trying to do everything that we can. We don't know what we're gonna do yet for the show, we don't know if we're gonna do a review or we'd like to do maybe a live podcast, or we don't know what we wanna do yet, but we wanna do something special for our 100th episode because, to be honest, we were like, we didn't think we were gonna make it this far.
One thing you could do is like I think is always kind of fun to do is allow people to like ask you questions and just have one where it's sort of like a sort of behind the scenes, this is who we are. What questions do you have for us?
Yeah, that was kind of a one thing is, like, for them to get to know us a little bit more and could ask us anything they wanted just to, because we wanted to build a community, and one of our things was to join our Film Fanatics family because we're very open, and if you wanna send us a message, we'll answer it, and we're very engaging on everything, and we wanna make sure that's what we stay as, because we don't wanna be those people that just ignore it or think that we don't have to answer everything. We want to be so engaging and so positive, um, as much as we can, and because this has been awesome for us to do, and this is kinda like a real fun thing for us. It's kind of like our hobby now, and it's like we look forward to doing this. Every time we get a chance to do this, it's like we always get so excited. We're just pumped to come in and sit down and just talk about movies, and there's a lot of things that we would like to talk about and wanna record even longer, but we don't, and we're actually trying to get in the process to be like an actual, I guess you could say, a certified publication on Rotten Tomatoes as a critic.
Didn't realize that was a thing, but that would be so awesome.
Yeah.
'Cause Rotten Tomatoes is a pretty good place to go for reviews.
Yeah, and we mention a lot of like, we use Rotten Tomatoes a lot, like, we tell our listeners, like, "Okay, well, Rotten Tomatoes has it at, you know, say, 90 on the critics, but, hey, the audience score is this," and we kinda give them a rough estimate, and then we give them our ratings and everything, and sometimes they're either close to the audience or close to the critics, but we kinda give them an honest review of it, and most of the time, me and my co-host, sometimes we're fairly close, but sometimes we're, like, completely out the, off the, different end of the spectrum. Like, he may completely loved it, and then I'm probably didn't like it as much, and our ratings are completely different, but that's the beauty of it, and because what he saw, I might have didn't see as much or didn't feel it like he did.
Different people have different personal experiences, which influences how they think and or feel about different things.
Oh, exactly. That's been the great thing so far. I'll let you know kind of our little secret too, that what we do in our podcast. We do our podcast raw. We don't talk about anything. We don't discuss the movie with each other. We start recording and do our intro. We kind of go about, okay, hey, this is what we're going to do. Like, okay, second part of the episode, we want to mention this, or we're going to do this, or we have this giveaway. How do you want to do the giveaway? We talk about that, but when it comes to the review part of the podcast, neither one of us know what we're gonna say. We do it completely raw.
Yeah, I definitely like that because it makes it feel more real and genuine and less scripted.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious though, do you take notes on like things that you want to make sure you bring up?
Typically, yes, like, I'll have, like, on our phones, we'll have a little checklist of, like, some points that we would like to make. We
Mhm.
do those, but it's like I said, just the main part of the review, just the movie portion of the review is completely unscripted, so you get to hear our actual reactions and, like, how you get to feel how surprised one of us is or both of us, and, like, it's just I feel that that makes it into in such a better show for us because we can feed off of each other, and we know how to, like, bounce things back and forth from each other. It just feels more for us, it's more of a rhythm, and that's what we want is a very authentic show, and that's what we try to give our listeners, and that's kind of how we've been doing it almost since day 1, is just a very authentic, unscripted show.
I like that a lot. I also don't really script most of my stuff, but then again, I'm an interview show, so I had general questions planned
Yeah.
out. Then I just kind of make the rest up as I go.
Hey, sometimes that's the best way to go.
Yeah. So, what are some of the challenges you've faced in whether it's in running a movie or helping run a movie theater or when it comes to having the Film Fanatics podcast?
I think one of the biggest issues is having a bad movie, because if we have a bad movie and the movie was really awful, it's hard to trash the movie when the person that's doing a podcast is a theater owner that is showing the movie. It kind of puts me in a weird situation where I'm playing this movie for the studios, but I totally do not like it, and I'm selling tickets to my customers to watch a movie that I just completely just trashed on the podcast.
Oh, just because you didn't like it doesn't mean they won't.
Well, exactly, and my dad, on the other hand, he's very old school, and he feels like you shouldn't trash a movie that we are showing. That's not good business. But I try to turn it around, be like, "Hey, look at it this way." I'm like, "Maybe I said this movie was awful, but maybe other people like, really, it's that awful? I'm gonna go see it. I'm gonna see if he's right. I'm gonna see for myself and see what I think of it." That's how I try to turn it around.
Yeah, I feel that because my friends were telling me how terrible The Room by Tommy Wiseau was, as well as we watched reviews for how terrible both of the animated Titanic movies were, and
Yeah.
I watched all 3 of those. This very surreal feeling of, like, who would ever think this is a good idea, and why are there so many rapping dogs?
Yeah, that's kinda been probably one of my biggest challenges, is the movie itself, of, like, how bad a movie was, and then trying to not really trash it too much, and that was kind of the other reason why we changed our name, so it wasn't really affiliating with the Plaza Cinema, that we were our own thing. That's why we wanted to change the name, we wanted to get our own Facebook page, so we weren't really posting our main stuff on the cinema's Facebook page. We weren't really having our cinema name as the podcast. We were trying to be our own, I guess, your own entity, and so not so much affiliated with our movie theater.
The Plaza Theater does not have its own podcast. It's just some of the people that help run the theater happen to run a podcast talking about movies.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the good thing is now my co-host, he's not an employee of mine. He's a friend of mine now, and he doesn't have any affiliation with the movie theater. Um, so it's just me, and being a family movie theater, and having this as my family business. Sometimes it's just a little like sketchy, where I'm just kind of like treading on that thin ice, but I still get some awesome goodie bags from the studios as giveaways. So that's a perk for the podcast, is I get to give some giveaways away that the studio gives us to promote the show, or to promote the
Ah,
movie. So that's always been really good.
that's nice.
And the other thing I try to give away is I try to give away movie posters.
I love movie posters.
Oh, I have so many that I try to, like, I'll put up, like, "Hey, we're giving away a whatever movie poster. Hey, go follow us on Twitter, or go do this, or go rate us," and well, we always do something to get some interaction going, and most of the time I will pick someone like, "Hey, you just want a movie poster."
Nice.
So
Actually, so we recently kind of sort of won a movie poster. It wasn't really like we won it in a drawing. It was more of a my mom knew a guy who wrote and produced a movie, and she got a signed poster from it.
Oh, okay.
But so it's a smaller indie film that hasn't been shown in a lot of places, but it's definitely been it's definitely done pretty well,
Yeah, that's awesome.
considering it's a Christian sci-fi movie about people who invent time travel, then other people come and hijack it to go back in time and kill Jesus.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's called Assassins 33 AD, and I think last time Mom and I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, it actually had a not terrible score, and I'm like, "Wow."
Yeah, sometimes that can really surprise you when you think a movie's not gonna do so well, and then Rotten Tomatoes has it, like, a lot higher than you expected it to have. Those are sometimes very surprising.
Part of it's because, like, it's a Christian sci-fi movie that only started in 3 theaters.
Yeah, that probably has something to do with it too.
Yeah, it was actually really interesting, and so have you ever heard of the TV show, The Marriage Boot Camp?
I have. I didn't follow it, but I have heard of it.
I don't follow it either. So the people who originally founded the boot camp, they're no longer affiliated with it. They sold the TV show. They're the people that made the movie.
That makes sense.
What are some common misconceptions or things you wish people would understand about what it is you do?
Movie theater wise, it's not our fault that the movie's bad. So you ca if people think that movie theaters, it's all their fault that this movie's playing, like, "This movie's inappropriate, this movie was why are you showing this?" We do have, in a way, contracts with the studios, and we have to play studios movies. If they're giving us the movie, we have to play it, and we're contracted to play it, so many weeks, that they want it ran. And
Yeah.
we kinda get a lot of heat on stuff like that, on the movies that come out that are maybe inappropriate, or they can't believe it, you're playing this, or, "This movie is really bad. Why are you even playing it here? And why can't you get this movie?" Because they also don't understand, just because you see a movie on TV or online, they either go wide or they are limited. And what that means is, when it goes wide, that means it's a pretty much kind of it releases to pretty much anybody that wants it and can get their hands on it. It's a wide release. Limited is more, they're only releasing to so many copies of the movie, and it's usually to the bigger markets, to the bigger chains like a Cinemark or something, into the more populated areas. So independents like us and smaller theaters are not necessarily going to be able to get the limited movies. Hollywood thinks of it as like this. They think, well, if we make this movie a limited basis and not release it to everyone, well, that means we can release it to our bigger market, and we'll make more money, because it's gonna bring all those other people that would go see it closer to other theaters, are now gonna come to all cram into one location or a few locations, and it makes their numbers more inflated than it is.
So they're cheating the system.
Exactly. So they could make more money if they would release it wide. But then there's, studios out there, like the smaller studios that are not like, say, Sony, Disney, those big mega monsters, where they can't release it wide. They have to release it. So more of those independent studios that don't have the budget to release a movie wide. And sometimes that we get a lot of flack on that kinda stuff. And that's kinda been a misconception, with theaters. They feel that we have complete control of what we get, and that's not the case. And we actually have a booker that helps book our movies, that does the negotiations with the studios for us, on our behalf, to help us get the movies that we want.
Mhm.
That's kinda one thing. Podcasting wise, I haven't gotten a lot of misconceptions with the podcast. No one's really said anything negative about it. Luckily for me, that's been very, just, I guess you could say, kinda smooth sailing so far. I haven't had any, like, rough patches of a misconception. Everyone finds it really interesting that, "Wow, you're doing a movie review podcast, but you also own a movie theater, and you get to watch these movies before they come out. You get behind the scenes access. You have knowledge of the industry of the theaters." So, that's kind of a cool thing that I take a lot of pride in, that I get to do, that a lot of other people that are in my genre and that are doing reviews, that I get to see this, and I get to do things that they don't get to do.
That is kinda cool, and I'm just a little jealous, but I also imagine it can be kinda hectic at times just because that's how life is.
It is because, like I said, remember, I when I go to my trade shows in August, every year, they take us to a studio movie grill, which obviously they feed us for free.
I love SMGs.
Oh, yeah, but we get to watch a movie that's, like, still 2 weeks out before it's released, and that we get to do a private screening of it.
Then you can't talk to anyone about it for 2 weeks.
No, yeah, we're, like, embargoed until the embargo lifts, and this is how serious they take it. And a lot of people don't understand, like, movie theaters are so strict on recording in your cell phone, like, no, they are, it's piracy, but here's the thing, you're in a theater, like Studio Movie Girl, so you're in a theater with theater owners and big shot movie people, people that may own like 10 locations. So you got people that are completely aware of the movie industry. And here is a studio, let's just say Universal, that comes in, that hand delivers this hard drive that has the movie on it that is being released to us only. And you have security that are inside of the theater the entire time wearing night vision goggles because they make sure that you turn your cell phone completely off, and if you get it out, you are escorted out of the building.
I was kind of expecting to hear that they just kind of collect your cell phones at the door.
No, they don't do that, but they stand there and they watch you the entire time. Now, granted, you don't really pay attention to them because you are 1, you're eating your meal, but you're pretty much watching the movie, and you kinda forget that they're there. But that's the thing. We're theater owners, and they're treating us like we do not know the rules, and that's how strict the studios are. They have these people here in place watching and making sure that you do not use your phone, and then sometimes they make you sign the waiver that you cannot talk about the movie, and promote it on your Facebook, your website, or anything that you do until a certain time frame.
Gotta love NDAs.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite thing is since I sometimes do some freelance work, every once in a while I have to sign an NDA. And my favorite thing is when they're like talking about something, they're like, "Oh, wait, you signed an NDA, so I can talk about this." I'm like, "You're about to drop some really exciting news on me, and I'm not going to be able to say anything, am I?"
Yeah, that's kind of the one thing, and but you know what? It's still really cool because I can talk about that's the cool thing with, us doing the podcast is I'm able to talk about the trade show and stuff like that, and it just gives you a perspective of what's going on in the movie industry, what new things are coming that we don't know is being released in the next year, and it's really cool that I get a lot of insight that I get to share before other people get to know about it. And we get to watch trailers that are not even released yet, even though they may be raw and unedited. There's just a lot of stuff that the studios bring us that we get to see what's going to be coming out within like the next year. And most of the stuff that they're bringing us, like for 2020, when we go in August, they're bringing us stuff that's coming out in 2021 and possibly 2022. So we get to see a lot of firsthand stuff which is so it's like really cool. It's just like you kind of like movie lovers, you kinda geek out over it, but, you have the other people over there that are just business, 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 and like, "I'm running a business, I'm running a movie theater, so, okay, we got this," and most of them have no clue what the movie is like. They may turn to their manager that is with them that they bring on, with them, and they're like, "You think this is gonna be any good?" So, a lot of these theater owners are out of touch with what movies are good and what's not.
That not only gives you an interesting perspective, I also imagine it kind of makes it easier for you as opposed to other movie related like movie review podcast producers is you can kind of plan some of your reviews out ahead farther ahead of time than most people can.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we do in a way. It gives us a little bit of a guideline on what our next episodes are gonna be. So, that's kind of been a big help with us too. So, and finding out on a weekly basis on movies that we're gonna be getting and what we're going to be reviewing and what we're gonna watch and stuff like that. One of the last misconceptions in the movie industry is we don't necessarily just because they give us a movie, we don't get to watch it right away. These movies are now encrypted with a special key. We can load it into our computer and our servers, but the movie is locked. The studios have to give you a special encryption key that unlocks the movie on a certain day at a certain time and will lock on a certain day at a certain time. So we can't just watch the movie whenever we want to just because they give it to us a week or week and a half early. It sits in on our server ready to go for close to a week before we can actually preview it ourselves.
Wow. Talk about tight security, but I guess it makes sense because that's a lot of intellectual property.
Yes. And they just feel like, "Oh, they're gonna show it early and they're gonna show it to all these people and we're not gonna get our money." That's kinda what they think.
Yeah, and I imagine if someone shows it early, that could mess stuff up. Cause I work in a bookstore, and so we had a book that was supposed to, like, not come out until a certain time, so we had all the boxes, and then I came in one day, and we were putting it out early, and was like, "Wait, I thought that didn't come out yet," and, like, yeah, another store accidentally opened it and put it out early, so
Yeah, that's kinda how the movies work for us when we get them. So that's kind of another misconception that I would have to say, and those are probably those 2 that I mentioned are probably the 2 main things that are just a complete misconception with, movie theaters.
what's some advice you wish someone had given you when you first started doing your podcast, aside from find a co-host?
Yeah. Really just, like, more helping step by step on figuring out how to record it, what the certain things mean, and kind of give you a breakdown on how things work, and instead of kinda just going in and, like, when they say, "Oh, yeah, you just need a microphone and a computer." "Okay." And it's just like, "Yeah, you hit record and just start talking," and this they don't really kinda go over absolutely every detail that I've had to kind of learn as I go, or I've done research and looking online, which of course, thank goodness for the internet.
That's how I've learned everything I know about podcasting, aside from the stuff I bug friends about. But that
Exactly.
was just I could go to the internet or I could ask someone I know for a fact has personal experience. So help.
And yeah, and of course, with me and being in a small town, I don't have anybody here that does podcasting really, and not having anybody that does podcasts, it was very hard for me to get advice on what to do, what should I get, how do I do this, how do I market myself, and how do I promote this, and what can I say, what can I not say? It could be very overwhelming at times, but at the end of the day, I it would have been great for just like, "You know what? You just have fun. You get to talk about things that you are passionate about, that you love, and you can share your knowledge to other people, and then meet other people that share the same common stuff. And when you just talking, everything else it just kind of falls into place. That's what I've kind of learned is that over time that everything just kind of works its way out and everything ends up working out for the best. And I still feel like I can edit better. Like I still wish I could probably edit better and feel like our audio is really good, but I feel like we could be better. And that's what we are still striving to be right now is just to keep growing and just make our podcast even better. And we're hoping that one day, hopefully we can be a very well-known movie review podcast, and hopefully that will work its way into the future. But being able to do what we do now and just kind of relax and have fun with it, everything seems to just kind of work out and it fits. And it's hard to really explain how everything worked out, but it just, for some strange reason, everything just worked for the best.
You finally found that little niche that fits you just right. Because something I've found with doing these podcasts, because I'm like, I'm doing all of this by myself. And it's
Yes.
pretty much all I do when I'm not at work.
Yeah, and when I first yeah, like I said, when I started it by myself, it was rough too.
Yeah, review shows are a little bit harder to do with a single person. You kind of need that person to bounce off of. But I found with Interviews, I can totally do it one person because I
Oh, yeah.
studied journalism in college. I loved asking people questions and getting their stories and all that fun stuff.
And see, that's the good thing. That's kind of why it's easy for me to answer questions, because when I'm asked a question and I can answer it, it's like, okay, it's not hectic, it's not overwhelming, it's just something.
The conversation, it's natural, it flows.
Exactly. It's fun to share, especially my story of how I started and, like, what my background is and everything, and that's why I feel like I have a very unique background that for a long time that I always took for granted because, when you step back and, like, you know what? Like, people are working, at other corporations and everything else, and I'm like, "Man, my family, we own a movie theater." How many people can really say that?
The only person I know.
So, taking more appreciation over the years since whenever I'm getting older and everything else, it's like I appreciate it a lot more than I did obviously when I was younger and in college and everything else. Because when you're in college and your family owns a movie theater, you're like, I get to watch movies for free and I get free popcorn. That was pretty much the whole thing when I was young because like I just get to walk in, I don't have to pay. I get to go behind the counter and just grab what I want. And no one has to tell me that I have to pay for it because my family owns it. That was the thinking, but whenever I was young and naive about it.
Not gonna lie, it's probably what my thought process would have been too. I'm like, I get all the popcorn, I get all the snow caps and the bunch of crunch, and
Yep.
I could just stick as many chocolate covered M&M, not chocolate covered M&Ms, dark chocolate M&Ms in my popcorn as I want, because I love dark chocolate M&Ms and popcorn.
So that's kind of how it was, but this has been something really cool, and that's why I feel like I could share something and spread my knowledge and my love for movies, and that's kind of why we do what we do now.
Just showing the world that there's so much more to love.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, it's about time to wrap up.
Okay.
Yes, we are to the shameless self promotion part of the interview. If you'd like to brag on some of the stuff y'all have coming up or tell people where we can find you.
Sure. So, you can always go to our Facebook page at the Film Fanatics podcast. Give us a follow there. We like to interact with everybody. That's also where you can find some really nice giveaways that we do for movie related items, from posters to watches that they send us. They send us a lot of cool things. We do a lot of interaction on that. We're on Twitter at Film Fanatics the. You can follow us on Twitter as well. Also, we do have a support page for Kofi that you had mentioned, but we are finally on Kofi if you'd just like to help us out.
I think it's actually supposed to be pronounced coffee, but it does look like Kofi.
Yeah. So Kofi, we have that. We usually have the button in our show notes and everything. So you can give us we're trying to save up for a second microphone for my co-host, a better microphone. So we are having a goal for that. So anything will help on that. So give us a follow on Coffee as well. To find us, you can go to Apple Podcasts on iTunes for the Film Fanatics podcast. And we're on Spotify and we are on the Google podcast if you are on an Android device.
All right. Also, I'm curious, what kind of microphones are y'all using?
So here, this is our setup. My co-host is just running an Audio Technica 2100. Um,
I
he's
also have
got
an Audio Technica.
me on the other
Actually, no,
hand.
that's the exact mic I have.
Me, on the other hand, I was fortunate enough. I'm speaking into my Rode Procaster. I'm also recording on the new Rodecaster Pro interface.
I'm nowhere near that fancy.
Uh, I wasn't either, but I would when I got it, this thing has been made life so much easier for podcasting. You don't have to worry about mix and minus for people that want to call in on your show on a cell phone, because it mix and minus is for you because there is a Bluetooth connectivity for your phone, or you can hook your phone to the TRRS jack and you just have them call in and you don't have to do anything. No third party plugin, no third party app, nothing on your computer. This thing does it all.
An Incomplete Guide to World Domination is directed and produced by Brianna Toiber as part of Pseudonym Social, a creative podcast network. Music is by Patrick Chester of Chester Studios. You can find more of his work at chesterstudios.net. If you would like to help support our show, you can find us at patreon.com/pseudonymsocial. You can also leave a review on iTunes to make our show easier to find for those who need it. For more information on the other shows produced by Pseudonym Social, please check out our website at pseudonymsocial.wordpress.com.